What's going on, guys? We are back now, UFC. We had a week off last week. We had boxing and PFL. We actually did really good with PFL. I usually tend to stay away from them for the mere fact that it's so volatile, right? Like I always tell you guys, don't bet Bellator, don't bet PFL. There was no UFC. There was a few guys in PFL that I'm very aware of that I wanted to take advantage of, so we ended up doing well over there. We had a parlay that was tied into boxing. I think we only went up like a half a unit. Nothing crazy, but we did go up, which was fine, better than going down or not going anywhere at all. You know, before we jump into the card, I do want to touch on the boxing a little bit. Benavidez is a guy I've been talking about for a long time. Andrade is he was a really good test. This was a guy who was an actually slick boxer, a very sound defensive fighter. Benavidez is knocked kind of for being cemented to the ground, kind of just roboting forward. But this is a guy who always has a slow burn, right? This is a guy who comes out, you could take a lead on him. It takes him a good 2-3 rounds to really dial you in. And that's exactly what he did in this fight. But he also did show boxing ability here. He actually showed the ability to box, which was really nice. So Benavidez wins that fight. It looked a little off in the beginning, but I think that was more Andrade's boxing ability can kind of make you look a little foolish, can make you look a little cautious in there. And Benavidez being cautious out of the gate as it is, and having a guy who's kind of using the real estate of the ring, using his footwork, using his defensive prowess, I think it looked a little worse than it was. Then after the third round, you just saw that slow burn coming, and Benavidez ends up winning and knocking him out. So very good win by him. I'm looking forward to the Canelo fight. I've been calling for this fight for 2 years. I said this kid is going to be the guy to dethrone Canelo. I still do believe that. He is now the mandatory. I hope they do follow through with that, because we know how these mandatories sometimes seep their way through the cracks. But if he does fight Canelo for his next fight, that is a fight I'm going to be looking to hopefully get him in the plus money and kind of hammer that one. The controversy of the weekend was Katie Taylor versus Chantel Cameron. Now, this was a really good fight. Katie Taylor is somebody I have a lot of respect for. Anybody who's overseas or anybody who's in Ireland and stuff really knows the whole Katie Taylor story. Really good champion. She's coming to the end of her rope here. She fights a Chantel Cameron, and she fought great. I'm not saying she didn't fight great. She fought fantastic in that fight. She ends up winning a majority decision, but the controversy stood with Chantel Cameron knocking her down and them calling it a slip. Now, I watched it numerous times, and I had people arguing with me back and forth, some taking my side, some not taking my side. That, in fact, was 1,000% a knockdown. When you have two women or two men coming in towards each other with a momentum coming this way and the other person falls back that way, you could say she stepped on her foot. She did not step on her foot. Their feet crossed over each other. Both feet were completely planted to the ground. There was no mishap in a footstep, or it was literally she walked into a solid shot and she was put. Just because she gets back up like this and she's not on Queer Street does not mean that that's not a knockdown. Your glove hits the ground, you go down. It doesn't matter if you're hurt or not. If you pop back up, it doesn't matter. It's still a knockdown. That could have been the sway of the fight. If that was a knockdown, Chantel Cameron probably would have ended up winning that fight on the cards, majority decision. So, listen, Katie Taylor did fight great. It's not like she didn't deserve it. It was a really, really close fight, but I do think Chantel Cameron should have been awarded that knockdown. And if she was, she probably would have ended up winning that fight. But overall, great weekend of sports, great weekend of boxing. The PFL, some really good fights on that card. Now you guys obviously know they're merging into Bellator. I'm not too crazy about that. I know a lot of people are excited about it. I would have loved to see all these fighters be free agents and see kind of where they land, right? That would have been fun. But that's what we get. So we got a good card on the horizon coming back. We're going to break down some of these. A lot of these lines I don't agree with. I think Dog City this weekend. I think there's a lot of opportunities for people to hit on some big money with some of these dogs. We're going to jump into the main event first. You got Dariush sitting at plus 225 and Tsarukyan at minus 280. I think that line is ludicrous. And the reason why I think that line is ludicrous is I still think people are sleeping on how good Dariush really is. This is a guy who, literally for a while was on a tear, a complete tear, an 8-fight tear where he couldn't get anybody's attention, literally anybody's attention. After a while, when you start fighting these guys, whether they're middle of the pack, whether they're, rubbing on the top 10, you're going to fight that one guy that gets you the attention. You just can't avoid anymore. And when he fought Gamrot and he beat Gamrot, you kind of knew, like, all right, the UFC can't avoid this guy anymore. Like, they have to eventually give this guy a big spot. So here he comes down, a title eliminator with Chucky Olives, and he loses in horrendous fashion. I'm not even going to say it was competitive. It was horrendous. It was competitive while it lasted, but it only lasted one round. You know, and I look back on that fight a couple times, and I was like, what happened there? Is this guy turning out to be another Cowboy Cerrone, where Cerrone would go on these runs, he'd go on these great runs, and then all of a sudden when the spotlight was on him, he folds. You know, it happened when he fought McGregor. It happened when he fought a lot of his big spots. He had to go see a sports therapist and everything for it. So, like, I'm sitting here and I'm wondering, is it one of them? So I really had to, like, dive in and look at that fight. Like, what happened in that fight? The one thing I do remember from that fight before I even go into the film is that this guy really, for the first time, he looked off. You know, he looked off in the weight cut. You could see he had a really bad weight cut. I don't know if they didn't dial it in properly, but there was something about Dariush in that fight where he just did not look himself going into the cage that night. You know, then when he came into the cage, you know, he looked good. I mean, this is a guy who literally allowed Oliveira to pull guard on him. He got on top of him. He had good top control. He hit some good transitions. He even went for a rolling heel hook at one point. And he looked good. And we're like, well, you know, he's got the grappling. We know he's got the grappling. So let's see how this thing plays out. So we thought we were going to see a really good chess match. Lo and behold, Oliveira kind of, swims out. He goes through the back door. He gets out. He stands up, and he catches him with a head kick. But before he caught him with that head kick, you could see kind of the whole body English of Dariush change. You could see, like, that took a lot out of him. That grappling exchange took a lot out of him, which is something we're not used to seeing with Dariush. This is a guy who historically has very good cardio. Even though he has never gone like a 5 rounds, we've never seen or worried about his cardio, right? He looked tired. He looked very tired. So I attribute that to the bad weight cut. When he got hit with that head kick, it wasn't clean, but you could see the fatigue and just that where it did catch him, it kind of put him off a little bit. It kind of shook his equilibrium. He ends up getting knocked down, and Oliveira gets on top of him, and we know what happens there. But it was kind of no defense. It was kind of just, he just kind of shelled up. Like, he was exhausted, he was hurt, and he kind of just folded in. That is something I got to be concerned with, you know, with him, especially in a fight like this with a younger guy in Tsarukyan, who, this is a guy who doesn't need to fight. Like, Tsarukyan does not need to fight. He comes from a very wealthy family. This is not a kid fighting out of the streets, looking to make a name for himself, looking to, support his family. Like, if he didn't fight anymore, this kid would be fine. We were first introduced to this guy when he fought Makhachev. And he kind of gave Makhachev all that he can handle in that fight, right? That's when, like, Tsarukyan really came onto the map. You kind of got to look at that, too, and say, all right, well, this does happen in some of these spots. You know, I remember when Elliott came out and fought Demetrius Johnson. Like, he gave Demetrius Johnson a little bit of a rough time because you don't know. You don't know who you're fighting, what you're planning for. And that can kind of throw a wrench in your game plan. So you got to kind of factor that in and say, I wonder if that was the case. I wonder if, like, Islam just didn't know what he was in for. He didn't know how to gauge it. And it was just an ultimate fight by Tsarukyan. Even though he lost the fight, he gave Islam all he can handle in that fight. So you got to give the kid respect there. As his career went on, he was winning fights, and you just saw that the kid was something to be watched. Like, you had to watch this kid. Like, this kid was going to be good. But there was something about his style when he fought Gamrot that I was like, this is a fight that I see him losing. Like, this is a fight where he's going to learn a lesson. And it turned out to be true. Gamrot ended up coming in, and just everything that Tsarukyan did in the beginning was very good, but you could just see a clear drop-off. Like, he ran out of tricks. His conditioning started weighing on him a little bit, and it was just becoming more and more of an issue where he was losing a step in the fight. And Gamrot ended up winning that fight. He comes back, he beats Ismagulov, and he beats Silva. So did he lose a step in that? Did we kind of see a little hole in his game? Yeah. But at the flip side of that, we also saw his rebound. You know, he's a lot younger. When you look at this fight, you have to look at paths, right? And you got to say to yourself, well, who has more clear paths here? Well, if you're looking at Beneil Dariush, the guy is more well-rounded. I mean, the guy's got very underrated striking. He was a no-gi world champion in 3 different belt divisions outside of black belt. Very high level grappling, very slippery. He's got very underrated wrestling. His issue is his chin. His chin sometimes can fail him. And when you get a guy like Tsarukyan, who's younger, who hits with a lot of power, who throws a lot of spinning back fists and stuff like that, he can be tricky, he can be dynamic, but he has the opportunity to lean on his wrestling a lot. He will put a lot of pressure on you. He's going to be like a little bit faster in there. So that's kind of the one hole with Beneil. Outside of that, Beneil doesn't have many holes. I mean, it's his chin that you got to be concerned with. He's also never been 5 rounds. I mean, we've never seen him really tired outside of the Oliveira fight. He looked like his weight cut did something to him, but all his fights, like, you got to remember, they avoided Dariush. The UFC avoided him. They never gave him big prominent spots. So this is a fight now. He's in for a 5-round fight with Tsarukyan. Tsarukyan, we've seen him in 5 rounds, but we've also seen him get tired. This is a fight where I think Tsarukyan's got to put on a certain kind of a pace on Dariush and keep that pressure up. And if he fails, if he falters in certain spots of the fight, I think it can hinder him a lot. This is a fight where initially I came in and I recorded a show with Bush and I said, I think Tsarukyan's the right side. And I do. There's a part of me that feels like, the younger guys coming in, a lot of people do want to see that Islam fight, the rematch over again. It is a perfect spot for him. So there was a part of me that feels like, yeah, this is his spot. This is a big name where he's going to come out. He's going to put him in a prime location, in the brackets to maybe get a rematch here. But I don't know. I don't like that price tag. Minus 280, I think is extremely insulting to Dariush. I think Tsarukyan has to get this. I think the longer this fight goes, the more it favors Dariush. I really, really do. I'm flipping my pick here, and I'm going with the dog. I'm going with Dariush here. I think he's going to be able to stay at range a little bit more. I think he's going to be a little bit more composed. I don't think he's going to rush the pocket in so hard. I think he understands that Tsarukyan's going to want to really utilize his pressure, utilize his wrestling. And even though Dariush is not the better wrestler, Dariush is, like I said, he's a very, very slick with no gi. This guy knows how to get out of bad positions. This guy knows how to, grapple. If you get tired, he will absolutely 1,000% take your back. So I just think talent-wise, there's more in Dariush's favor here. I do think he has more tricks in his sleeve to get this done. I do believe if this stays a stand-up fight, this favors Dariush. I think his striking is very underrated. It's his chin. It's his chin that concerns me here, and it's also Tsarukyan's cardio to put on that pace for 5 rounds. So they both give me concerns, but I just think Dariush is a little bit more polished as a fighter. I think he has something to prove here. I think he knows if he loses 2 in a row, the chances of him getting a title shot is going to become very, very meek. He's going to have to really, really climb his way back. But a win over Tsarukyan here can kind of put him in a decent spot again, at least to, be in the firing range of that. So I'm going to go Dariush here. No confidence in any way, shape, or form. I do think if you're oriented Tsarukyan for side, that's fine too. I would not lay 280 on that. I wouldn't even tie that into a parlay. I think it's ridiculous. But I'm going to take a flyer on Dariush. I think he gets it done. Next one, you got Jalen Turner, minus 225, Bobby Green, plus 185. If this was a normal camp, if these guys were in a normal fight camp mode where both of these guys had full camp, I would completely 1,000% agree with this price tag. But when you got a guy in Turner who's as big as he is, like this guy is fucking big for 155. For him to cut all this weight to fight a guy in Bobby Green who is literally active, he's all over the place. He's on, he's got momentum on his side. He's showing new wrinkles in his game with even some of his power. You got to wonder, like, what happens if this fight gets stretched? What happens if this fight goes longer? Is Turner 1 round and done, and then all of a sudden that weight cut's going to start eating him? Listen, I'm not even confident that he makes weight. I got to be honest with you. I'm not even confident that he makes weight. This is a fight that you have to see what the scales look like. You got to see what the scales look like. This is no easy task for Turner to hit 155. And how is he going to look when he hits 155? So we have no idea what's going to happen here. I'm under the impression that he's either not going to make 155 or he's going to miss it, and he's going to look terrible missing it. They might have to have this at a catch weight or something like that. We'll see as the week unfolds. But, look, I do think Turner should win the fight. I think he's the longer fighter. I think he's the rangier fighter. I think that he, if he keeps this in space, he's obviously got better power. If it ends up hitting the ground, Bobby Green's not one to take it to the ground. But if it does end up hitting the ground, we've seen his long limbs get very slick and transitional, with some of his chokes and stuff like that. So, by all rhymes and reasons, Turner is the right side. But the circumstances will make you pause and say, hold on a second, this is one of the biggest guys in the division. How the fuck is this guy going to make weight? in this amount of time. Because I don't care how good you are, I don't care how talented you are, if you're drained, if you're sucked out, and your legs are gone from a weight cut, all that shit goes out the window. So this is something you really got to look at the scales. I'm going to go with Turner here. I'm going to pick him. But like I said, this is all contingent on how he looks on the scale. Next fight, you got Font minus 135 versus Figueiredo plus 115. A lot of people need to understand that Figueiredo is coming up here from flyweight to bantamweight. So this is kind of a bump up. And we've been wanting to see this for a while, right? Because if you really think about it, Figueiredo really has to cut weight. I mean, this guy, when he goes to cut weight, this guy looks like fucking Skeletor, on the scale. So he's always had an issue cutting weight. You got to think that his power is going to translate up to bantamweight. You got to, think that he's still going to have that pop, especially because he cuts hard at flyweight. So I don't think the power is going to be an issue. The issue I think that he might have in this fight is the way Font works behind his jab. Now, this is another thing where you got to look at, like, who has more, guns in their holsters, who has more bullets in their gun to really get this done. What is the one flaw that Font has? One flaw that we've seen Font had is if you take him down, he accepts position. The guy you can hold him down, and we've seen him rocked numerous times. Like, this dude gets fucking tagged, and he goes on the stink leg, and that's it. And maybe he doesn't get knocked out, but in a fight where you rock somebody and you give the optics that you're hurt, that heavily sways the damage, because that's the main culprit of scoring is damage. So if you're giving the optics that you're rocked and you're on stinky legs and you're fucking backing up and you're woozy, that's a big indicator that, all right, this dude won this round. So we've seen it over and over him, and Figueiredo carries that kind of power. Now, the thing on Figueiredo's side that I don't like is this is not a guy who throws straight punches. He's very he winds up when he throws his punches. He throws looping punches. Nothing's really hardcore down the center. This is a guy who does have wrestling. He does have grappling. He doesn't use it all that much. He tries to stay on the feet. Very bad move here with someone like Rob Font, who utilizes an amazing jab behind some amazing boxing. So it's interesting because it's 3 rounds. This is a fight to me that should be 5 rounds. Because it's such a technical fight on kind of both sides where this is going to play out. I don't mind the line at minus 135. I do think that Font should be the favorite. He's the natural bantamweight where Figueiredo's coming up to bantamweight, and we're going to see him here for the first time, in a long time. How is he going to hold? How is he going to hold serve? Is he going to be able to deal with the power of Font if Font uncorks something on him? How is he going to get inside with Rob Font's jab and his speed and his boxing ability? These are all question marks that are legit. So I don't have no problems with Font being the favorite here. I'm going to lean Font just because I do believe in his boxing. I do believe in the way he works behind the jab. I think Figueiredo's going to have some issues with that. I think Figueiredo's going to have his spots. I think that he might even hurt him in the first round and steal the first round. There's definitely going to be a spot in this fight where Figueiredo catches him with something that will swing around in some way. I just think if Font is smart, Font is going to stay on the outside. He's going to utilize a good jab. He's going to work behind the jab. He's going to set everything up with the jab and kind of coast to a decision, maybe 29-28 in a close fight, fairly close rounds. But Font will just be the more active fighter, landing the more shots, and giving the optics that he clearly won those rounds. Outside of that one round that Figueiredo probably is going to put him on weak legs. So I'm going to go Font here. Like I said, no confidence in a lot of these fights on this card, but very, very good card. I just don't agree with these lines. Next one, we got Brady, minus 118 versus Kelvin Gastelum, plus 110. This is the first time we're going to see Kelvin Gastelum at welterweight since 2016 UFC 200 against Johnny Hendricks. Interestingly enough, like, what was our biggest gripe with him for a long time? It was really his weight cutting. Like, this guy just was not disciplined. He had all the talent in the world, but he just wasn't disciplined. He loved food. I mean, who doesn't love food? But I mean, when it comes to camp, you gotta dial yourself in. And this guy would be almost like a mini raging bull. He would let himself just go. And that's one of the problems I see with Hill. That's going to give Hill a very big problem. Jamal Hill is very similar to some of these guys where when the offseason comes, he just eats and blows up and blows up and blows up. And it's going to blow up in his face. It always does. So these things like that, I don't care about an injury or not. When you're injured and stuff, these are times that you got to do the other things that make champions. You got to really dial in your nutrition. You should be studying certain things. I mean, let's be honest. Look at Yuri. I mean, even though he lost that fight, and I knew he was going to lose that fight, look at his body. Look how he looked. The guy took care of himself. He did the research outside of his injury. What can I do to optimize my body better? Where guys like Jamal Hill, they'll just walk around with their stomachs hanging out. They don't care. They'll eat whatever they want to eat, and that's going to bite him in the ass. That's why Jamal Hill will never be a good champion for reasons like that. Those are very big things, especially as your fight camps go on and on and on. You got to stay dialed in. So the same thing we said with Kelvin Gastelum, but the only thing is Kelvin Gastelum was very young. You know, this is a guy we're like, whoa, this guy just is not disciplined. So you kind of not threw the towel away on him. You knew that he was always going to be a good fighter. His durability was always going to keep him in fights. But when they announced welterweight, you were like, wait, hold on a second. This fucking guy has problems making middleweight in some fights. How the fuck is this kid going to make welterweight? I've never seen him look so good. I've been looking at his pictures. I've been following him around. I've been not following him around personally, but watching some of his videos. And this dude looks completely clocked in. If he's completely clocked in, the talent is there. You know the durability is there. This dude is durable like a truck. What does that mean for someone like Sean Brady, who is very talented in himself, but we have seen this guy take back steps. We have seen this guy gas out. We've seen things with Brady that Gastelum doesn't have. Gastelum is durable. Even though Brady is durable, Brady can be knocked out. Brady can be put on the back foot. You're not putting Gastelum on the back foot. He needs to grapple the shit out of Gastelum in this fight to win this fight. He needs to really grapple him. Now, in the shape that he's in right now, is he going to be ready for that? Is he going to be able to sprawl and brawl? Is he going to be able to keep this on the feet for 3 rounds? If he does, you got to go Gastelum. This is all predicated on how Brady's wrestling fares, how long he can control Gastelum on the ground, and if he doesn't get tired. There's a lot of ifs in there for me. Can he get him to the ground regularly? Can he, control him on the ground? Can he hurt him? Is his gas gonna, there's a lot of ifs in there for me with Sean Brady. After I saw Gastelum, the way he looks and how clocked in he is, this is a young guy. This guy's still fairly young. I think he wins this fight. I'm gonna go with the dog again. I'm gonna go with Gastelum in this fight. I think he does win this fight. I think he drags this into deeper water. I think Brady probably wins round number 1, gets the control time that he wants, but uses a lot of energy in interim. And I think Gastelum kind of plays possum with the cardio end of things, makes him work, gives him certain spots, kind of sells him a false sense of security. And then as the fight gets older and the fight grows wiser for him. So I'm going to go Gastelum. I'm going to go Gastelum probably. I'll say safe pick would be probably Gastelum 29-28 decision, but I wouldn't be shocked if he ended up finishing Brady here in like the 3rd round. You got Silva minus 325 versus Guida plus 260. I don't know where they're getting this price tag. I guess they're looking at Guida's 41 years of age. Listen, Neto BJJ, we know what he is, right? This guy is chiseled. He's in great shape, muscled up. He comes out like a bull in the china shop, and then after round 1, he's dead to rights. You could literally own him. Now, what do we like about Guida? Guida, yeah, he's 41 years old. He's older. He can be chinny. We've seen him submitted numerous times because he gets very frantic and he runs himself into bad situations. What do we love about him? His cardio. The guy's cardio is endless. At 41 years old, the guy's got endless cardio. This is a fight where if Guida weathers the first round storm, this is his fight to win. So if you're telling me that you're giving me a minus 325 where his window to win this fight is in the first round, which very well, Neto BJJ can win this fight in the first round, without a doubt. He can catch Guida with something. He can lock something up on Guida. We've seen it 100 times. But if you're telling me that's the window you're giving me, because then if it goes into the 2nd round, you're taking a chance on Silva gassing out and Guida just doing what Guida does and just grinding him and grinding him and grinding him, I'm not going near that. I'm not even tying that into a fucking parlay. Nothing. Zero. Nothing. The DraftKings, nothing. Like, DraftKings is a little different scenario. You're looking for the upside. You're looking for the possible scenarios. So a possible scenario would be Silva to finish him in round number 1. If he does that, then he covers his DraftKings and he's a good play. But from a betting standpoint, absolutely not. Like, I'm not going fucking near this fight. And I'm actually going to take Guida to last round number 1 and go into round number 2 and start taking this fight. This is a card, guys, I'm telling you right now, there's a lot of fucking mispricings on here. Silva should be the favorite. I get it. There's guys that Font should be the favorite. Turner should be the favorite. Tsarukyan should be the favorite. There should be these guys should be favorites. They shouldn't be minus 325 favorites. I mean, there's no reason why Neto BJJ should be a minus 325 over Guida. So just on that fact alone, I'm gonna take a swing on Guida here. I think Guida last round number 1 and kind of drags him into that hell, that cardio hell that Neto just gets tired, and maybe he doesn't finish him, but it's just going to be the same story of just grinding on him, and the Carpenter gets a win at 41. The only fight on this card, and this is the last fight, that I agree with the line. Actually, I don't agree with the line because I think it should be steeper. Is minus 270 Soriano versus Stoltzfus. I think this line should be more like 370, not 270. I don't see a situation where Stoltzfus wins this fight. The only path I see for him would be a path that Soriano will give him, and that will be conditioning and cardio. If Soriano gasses out, then yeah, Stoltzfus can take this fight over. But I just don't see a scenario where Soriano loses this fight. I think Soriano gets it done inside the distance, probably in round 1. I don't usually tamper with lines at minus 270. I'm more of a, hovering around the 200 is the most I would ever go. But from a parlay perspective at minus 270, that's great. A great tie into your parlays for the night. So you could take Soriano and you could tie him in with something else, maybe on the prelims or on the main card that you have a firm stance on, and that 270 is actually going to be a nice piece. A lot of times guys will be tying in minus 380s, minus 400s. The line doesn't, your odds really don't swing that much. When you have a minus 270, that's kind of like a sweet spot for a parlay. So I don't mind that in any way, shape, or form. So I will go Soriano by knockout. So yeah, pretty good card. And then we're on a run now. We got a whole month of fights until the year ends. We're going to finish strong. We've been riding really good. This last month has been very, very good to me with wagering, with even NFL. Started off a little bit slow, and I came back strong in the last month and a half. So we are looking good. We're going to end the year strong. Come to see us at the madlabmma.com. Visit me on Twitter at madlabmma. And also, this New Year's, we have a announcement that we will be making probably in the next couple weeks. Something we're really, really excited about. Something that was driven from our subscribers. They kind of spawned the idea on us. Not that they said anything, but just from what we have seen. So we're excited for that. And that's it. We will talk to you guys next week.